Lone wolf, why you doing so good? By the fire, lots of magic afoot. Pagan rap, witch hop, yeah, lone wolf. Pagan rap, you could say I'm on the top
Hey,
shelf.
welcome everybody to the
Know
Lone
thyself,
Wolf Show.
what
I'm
you
the
say.
Lone Wolf, and the powers that be have implemented a surprise guest by Brother Moloch. Did I pronounce it right?
No, it's Moloch.
Moloch. I'm sorry about that. Moloch. How'd you get the name
That's okay.
Moloch?
It was given to me.
Given to you?
It was given to me by a spirit that started teaching me back in 91.
Really?
So, yeah, I called out to the universe for a teacher, and I didn't care who. I said I don't care who comes to teach me, and I was actually looking for a physical teacher, but a spirit came to me in a dream and said, "You called, I answered. I'm here to teach you." And I was like, "Okay." So, I started getting instructions, basic instructions, real simple stuff, and then things progressed, and then I was getting like I would be told go to this store, and then I'd be like, how sometimes those hunches teach you all of a sudden the book falls into your lap, open to the right page, and you're like, oh, there's the answer to my question right there. Things like that. And I would run into the right person, at a festival or at a gathering, and, they'd lead me to it was just like one cool thing after another. My path was just connecting the dots. And I was getting all this nifty, cool information about magic and sorcery, and, and it was just, and then the thing was, it was making sense. It wasn't just that I was accumulating a lot of data. It was dots were connecting and things were happening. And then when I was trying this stuff, it was working. That's what was cool. See?
John D. Edward Kelly, didn't like the spirit teach them too? That kind of the same thing?
Indeed.
That's it.
So did Mephistopheles with Faust. People forget that too. Mephistopheles, Faust, he taught Faust. Remember, Faust made a deal with the devil. He was given a familiar spirit. And, while Faust was a learned man, he didn't know that much about magic. He probably knew some being a learned man, but Mephistopheles taught him the real deeper secrets of magic. See, he taught him what humans couldn't teach him.
What devil are we talking about?
According to Goethe and Marlowe, he went and summoned up. He went and summoned up a spirit, but he got Mephistopheles, and he made a deal with him, to give his life. What was it, 10 or 20? I think it was 20 years, I believe, because Marlowe wrote about him, and then Goethe wrote about him. And in Marlowe's tale, Faust has a very tragic ending. But in Goethe's tale, Faust has more of a better ending, where he becomes more of it's an ascension of the mind. He becomes more of it. He transcends, is what he does. So he transcends Mephistopheles and becomes a man of wisdom. But the devil is a term that's been used loosely for a trickster spirit, not necessarily Satan or anything, because Satan in Hebrew just means adversary. That's all that means. It's just a title. People get that wrong all the time. They think that's a particular name of a particular spirit, like Lucifer, like it's a name. It's like, no, it's a title. But the devil is just the moniker that is often given to a trickster spirit, somebody who is trying to cause mischief and deceit and trickery and bedevil you. That's the old. It's the old. Pardon?
Is Loki a devil?
He's considered that in some of the lore. I think even Thor is quoted by saying, calling him, his devilry and stuff like that. But, depends on how it was written, if it was the prose Edda or the poetic Edda. the Christians wrote the Poetic Edda, but even though it's the Christians wrote it, it's considered to be 200 years earlier than the Prose Edda. So according to a lot of Norwegian scholars, the Prose Edda is considered to be older source material, and it's a little more closer to the original pagan. So sometimes when they write some of these lines, you kind of go, well, you know, is it close to what was told to them? You know, it could be, but I mean, you know, Thor was a little annoyed with his half brother sibling.
Right.
So, you know, and Loki was a bit of an ornery cuss.
Right.
You know, he did help bring down the Downdive. He did help bring about Ragnarok. So, you know, by all rights and means, is he a devil? I mean, in some ways, some people would consider him to be, yes. It depends on your perspective. You know, remember something. You know, as my old, I have my old late high priest and mentor Ron Parsley used to say, the gods of the old religion often become the devils of the new.
Yeah. Yep.
And, you know, we've seen this a lot in, you know, Mesopotamian religions where these gods and goddesses become demons in, you know, at least Solomonic magic, where a lot of them are attributed with demonic names and such, and, you know, cataloged as demons and things like that. And, you know, they're no more demon than you or I. I mean, it's because someone born again came along and said, these are demons, you can't work with them. And that's not right. You know.
What's up with 72? How come there's a lot of why is there 72 demons in the Goetta? What's up with 72? What's the number?
It's a holy number. It has to do a lot of it has to do with like you have the Shemhamphorash, which is the 72 holy names of God. Some people feel that the 72 spirits of the Goetia are the antithesis of the 72 Shemhamphorash, and that some people believe that these 72 names of gods can directly influence the 72 spirits of the Goetia. You know, there's debate about this amongst these scholars and these magicians. I mean, it's a lot of speculation and thought. I don't know. I mean, but when you take the spirits of the Goetia and you look at them, a lot of it has to do the dividing of the 72 has to do with the zodiac. Okay, a lot in ancient magic has to do with astrology. And when you start overlaying a lot of this onto the ancients and the zodiac, a lot more of it makes sense. Okay.
Wasn't there 72 cards of the tarot deck, 72 Goetic demons?
Well, there's 78 cards of the tarot.
Oh, that's right.
There's 78 cards. Yeah. 72 cards 72 spirits. I mean, you know, you can. Let me tell you something. I read, who was it? Draja Mikaherek, okay, in one of his books, I think it was The Art of Magic, stated that originally this is what he stated. Originally, if you go back far enough, you'll find out that there was only 9 Sephirs in the original Kabbalistic tree of life. And that they then later decided that they were going to add a 10th Sephira to make it 10. So it's like, because the Greeks only had 9 originally themselves.
It's that hidden.
And yeah, I mean, and if you look at the Kabbalah, a lot of the Solomonic practitioners keep saying that the Kabbalah, or the Hermeticists say the Kabbalah came from Egypt, and when the Jews were captured in Egypt. But see, the Jews were never held as captives in Egypt. They were held as captives in Babylon. Okay? There's no proof that they were held as captives in Egypt. No historical proof whatsoever. But they were held as captives under Nebuchadnezzar II. And a prophet named Moshe, which is the Hebrew form of Moses, came and negotiated for their release. There were no 10 plagues, there was no snakes in the staves, none of that nonsense. He just came, bargained with the ruler, got their release. 6,000 Jews were released. Not 6 million, not 600,000, 6,000. So you can start to see the parallels between where all this stuff come from. And also, here's another interesting fact. Angels, winged angels, are found in ancient Babylon and ancient Syria, okay, right. Samaria. You don't find them much else. But the Jews were held in ancient Babylon, okay, the Hebrews, and a lot of scholars tend to think that's where a lot of this, they got the idea for winged angels, and that they brought the whole idea with them from Babylon. And it does make sense. I mean, because let's face it, a lot of people, when they traveled throughout the ancient world, and a lot of scholars tend to forget this. And when I say scholars, occult scholars, okay? Let me put that into a term, occultists. They tend to forget that ancient man and ancient humans, when they traveled, they brought their gods, their goddesses, their shrines, their beliefs, their customs with them. Mm-hmm. And they spread them. As they met people, they shared them. As traders would do the same thing. They would spread these customs and belief. They would share these new prayers, these new gods and goddesses that they learned about. Of course they did. And as some people would say, well, that sounds like art. So they would take those and incorporate those beliefs and stuff into their own. And before long, many of these gods and goddesses all of a sudden got incorporated. And before long, Asherah was, Ishtar was, somewhere else along the way. And before you know it, she became she. And that's how it, all along the way. And we often say, well, that's not right. Well, it's how it happened. Because people traveled and they took their deities with them. Mm-hmm. And there are similarities in deities and in concepts. I mean, I'm going to tell you something. When you talk a forest deity, how many different ideas do you think there are about the forest that, one culture can have over another culture that are going to be different?
Is it
you know what I mean?
Is it archetypical occurrence of the same deity, just called different names?
Exactly. I mean, that's what we're looking at is, it's just different cultures, different names, different folk names, and even sometimes, there might be some different scientific names depending on the type of, if it's a family of the genus, there's people that'll talk about certain plants grown here in the southern United States that we use for root work that you can't find elsewhere in the world. And I'll say, well, look at the Latin name, the genus. And I said, go to your local botanical supply center and give them that genus name and ask them what they got that's close to it. And all of a sudden people start writing me back, oh my God, Moloch, I found something. And I said, well, yeah. It won't be exact, but it'll be close enough for government work, because I'm going to tell you something. When them Africans first came to the New World, do you think that they could find their exact plants and trees and bushes and shrubs? No. They talked to the plants until the plants spoke. The spirits of the plants told them, hey, I can do this for you. And once we identified what these plants are, these folk names, and what their Latin names are, now we know what they can do. Now we know what plants they are, and we can tell other people, hey, this is a folk name for the plant. This is what its folk attributes are. But here's the Latin genus name. It might have other relatives worldwide. Because remember, at one time, all these continents were connected together under Gaia. And, birds and animals and stuff spread tree or seeds and stuff. So a lot of times these plants can, they're all over the world. They're just under, they grow differently under different conditions. So, it's like, what is it? I'm trying to think, what is that? There's different families of, yeah, sure. Now that I need to think of a particular plant, I get a brain fart.
There's all kinds of variations of sage, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's different families of sage. Just take, for instance, that alone. There's different families of willow. I mean, there's lots of different families of plants. And I always tell people, you don't have to have like white willow bark for something. You can use another branch of willow. And I said, you don't always have to use, the bark. I said, sometimes you can make use with a few leaves or maybe just a branch. I said, you need to, just meditate with the tree a little bit, tell it what you need and let the tree guide you. The spirits of the plants will guide you if you talk to it and just meditate for a moment with it. Put it in your hand and, and just let it talk to you.
Divas?
A lot of people. Go ahead.
Are they called divas?
Yeah, plant divas. Reverend Paul Barrow had from the Church of the Unicorn, had a great book out on that, working with plant divas. Terrific book. I highly recommend it. Pardon?
Dear friend of mine.
Love him. Great book. Great author. I love his book on magical herbalism. I think it's a really good book.
Yeah, I have it here. That same book you're talking about.
Sure you do.
Yeah, I have it. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, there it is. That's a great book. I love that book.
Yeah,
I like it better than Cunningham's. I mean, Cunningham's is a good resource, but that book is excellent because it's just, I love it. I love it. He's got a lot of stuff Cunningham doesn't.
Yeah, I seldom bump into people who know who Paul was. It's cool.
Oh yeah, I recognize his work. In fact, he used to be in IGOS with me back in the day, and he wrote that book back then, and it was in fact I was sent an advance copy to read and comment on and write a review of, and I loved it. I said, man, this is an excellent book. And he wrote me a letter and thanked me for it. It was like, hey, thank you for the nice review. And I was like, dude, you don't need to thank me. Thank you for writing a good book about working with plant spirits.
Yeah.
Have you read that book yet?
I've read all of his stuff. He has a few different books.
Yeah, he's I put him up there with Draja Mikaharik. If you've not read his stuff, he's an excellent. He touts himself as a witch doctor. But he's just a regular old juju guy, just like an old country herbal doctor. But he lives in like New York or New Jersey, someplace like that. Mm-hmm. He's ancient. He's like 90 years old now. But he's got a ton of books out too. I like his stuff as well. They're just short and to the point. Not a lot of filler. And like Tarot Star, he's another one I like. He doesn't. And Tarot Star I like because he writes a lot of his rituals in rhyme.
Yeah.
I tell a lot of witches and Wiccans that I say, if you yearn for the days when, rituals were written in rhyme and spells in rhyme, I said he's your man because he does a great job.
Yeah, you got to write it in couplets. You got to rhyme. Yeah.
Victor Anderson's another one that does a great job of writing spells in rhyme and rituals in rhyme. He was Starhawk's teacher.
No doubt.
Yeah. So. But you were asking the other day if I had any interest in the Solomonic. Yeah, I was going to show you a good book if you have a real strong interest in it. This is a book called The Book of Grimoires.
Okay.
This is by The Secret Grammar of Magic by Claude Liqueteau is his name. Whoops, let me get it over so you can see it. The reason this book is good, he covers grimoires that are not normally found in the Solomonic catalog. Now, some of these are from the Sloan manuscripts, but he's got illustrations you can't find anywhere else. Not just circles, circles and pentagrams to stand in, but he's also got like other wild designs in here. He's got angelic seals and sigils and all kinds of cool stuff that he's culled from grimoires throughout the various, like the Bibliothèque d'Arsenal and the British Museum and other places. So it's a very good manual to have, especially if you have any kind of interest in Solomonic magic.
Right. Well, when I hear of angelic magic, the first thing that pops in my head is the Enochian magic. So, are those grimoires pre Edward Kelly and D, or are they after or before?
That's a good question, because I usually tell people, I'm just starting to study angelic magic now. I've purposely stayed away from it for years because Enochian magic is just extremely complex. And especially if you do it from like a lodge standpoint, it's verbose and overly complex. And that's something because when people have wrote and asked me, they say, Moloch, do you know anything about this? And I always tell them, I say, I know about as much about D and Enochian magic.
So you're just now indulging in angelic magic, and earlier on in your occultic studies, you didn't indulge too much at all. Just now you're
no, mostly what I did was what I started out doing. I started summoning spirits out of a book by this gal named Selenikathan, and she wrote about summoning the. Pardon? No, she taught. There's a book called God, Spirits, and Demons, and it was basically a book on how to summon the 4 elemental spirit leaders. Gob, Nixa, Peralda, and Jinn. And the idea was to learn to summon them first and to work, the elemental rulers, and work with them first, and then start working with higher level beings of spirits. So that's where I got my first grounding first. I'd summoned each of them about 4 or 5 times, and the first 2, the earth and water were easiest, but the air was a real bear, and fire was very quick. I got a hold of Jin very fast, and he didn't want to talk much at all, but air took me almost like all 5 times before I even got a chance to even talk with him.
Peralda, is that the right pronunciation?
Yeah, Peralda. And he just does not like humans at all. And for one thing, they don't like the fact that we pollute their environment. That's one big issue. They don't like us about that at all. And I mean, you can't blame them. You can't blame them. So I did that, and then after that, I started learning to work with the planets. I started with the simplest planets, worked my way up, and then to the more complex. And then after that, I started working, and then another thing I did too was during all of this, or just prior to all of this, actually I sat down and I went through my noggin, and I went through a book with my noggin and a pendulum, believe it or not, talking to my subconscious. And the idea was to try to work through my subconscious and all the nonsense that was buried in my subconscious. And I was trying to root out things that were keeping me from, being happy, that were limiting me. And I was trying to find out limiting beliefs and root them out and get rid of them.
Right.
And I mean, just there's all kinds of stuff in your noggin that, all the way from like when you're about 4 or 5 years old, all the way, because a lot of stuff you believe just simply because your parents or some authority figure told you it was true when you were a kid, and you still believe it.
Right.
So even as an adult. So I took time, and I took about 6 weeks, going through it, spending a couple hours a day, and just asking myself various questions over and over, and seeing if I still believe these things. And then after I, understood that I believed something, I would work to root out that belief and that limiting belief and get rid of it. And once I understood that I got rid of it, I knew I, had progressed just yet another step forward. And I believe this really helped a lot of my magic to take on a stronger form, because I was, removing a lot of blocks.
Yeah.
In a way, I'm going to tell you something. In fact, the way Aaron Leach and I talked about this, and he felt that that's part of the process that goes on with the Abramelin ritual. Because the idea is that you sit there for, several, he said the Abramelin ritual is only a 7-day ritual, and 6 months prior to that is really a cleansing. It's just to get rid of all the crap stuck in your noggin. So, and that's how I got rid of a lot of things. And I didn't get rid of all of it, obviously, but 6 weeks worth. And then, I progressed. And then, my first evocation didn't do so well. But I used, instead of doing it by myself, I used a seer. And Dave was he said he was experienced at meditating and he was into karate, but, he didn't know how really to disengage. And he kept staring into the crystal and he didn't know how to disengage properly. And so later that night while he was sleeping, the spirit came and visited him in his sleep and scared him half to death.
When you say disengage, you mean does that mean properly banish or?
Right. I banished, but see, he didn't, I wanted him to eat something, and sit and converse. He wanted to jump on his motorcycle and take off for home right away. And see, I wanted him to talk with me for a few minutes, eat something with me, come back down to earth. Because, I just had him elevated to a very high degree. And his mind was up there still.
Do you think that the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram is adequate to banish?
Dave performed it. I performed it. And yet still he had a visitation that night from his spirit. So what does that tell you? Right.
So do you think that it would have been better if you did the supreme banishing? There's a difference between lesser and supreme, right? There's two different ones.
Yeah, there is. Although I think in hindsight, I probably could have done better on my license to depart. I don't know. I think I should have probably done a little bit better on that, because realistically, according to the grimoires, that's really all a person should need to do is give the license to depart, and the spirit's supposed to go away, period. According to the Salamani tradition, then you're supposed to check, and and if there's nothing else, then you check, make sure the room's clear, and then they're gone. But the license to depart's supposed to be, the big thing. So now, as far as the other banishment rituals, if you want to seal yourself up against something, the Rose Cross rite is supposed to do that. That's supposed to seal your aura up against anything. Right. The LBRP just banishes phantoms, from what I understand. It keeps your mind from phantoms. From astral larvae, phantoms, things like that. I don't know that it protects you against spirits. I always was under the impression, according to Regardi, that the Rose Cross rite seals up your aura. Right. And by that, I took him to mean that's what you need to do if you want to protect yourself against astral attacks, magical attacks, things like that, spirit attacks.
So what are the origins of the Rosicrucians? Are they come from Jewish origins?
That I'm not sure of. I've never really studied the Rosicrucians. I've read a little bit about them, but a lot of the ceremonial magical literature. I've read Regardi a little bit, William G. Gray, a little Dion Fortune, but not a whole lot in the big ceremonial magical literature. I did practice ceremonial magic for about a decade, just didn't feel that I got much in the way of results and went back to sorcery.
Mm-hmm. I feel like the Rose Cross comes from the Rosicrucians, that's why I brought it up.
It's very possible. They borrowed a lot of symbolism and then added some of their own stuff to it. It's very possible. McGregor Mathers and Wynn Westcott were, they were very creative. And they were both, I think they were both Masons and Rosicrucians, and, they had contacts. And supposedly, now, from what I understand, I've asked a couple of guys online who were Golden Dawn aficionados, in the lodge, and they said that Anna Sprengel, they said now this was who where Mathers always swore up and down that he got the documents for the rituals, that these rituals were passed on to him and Westcott by this woman named Anna Sprengel. But see, no one could ever find who this Anna Sprengel was. So, maybe you can find maybe a Golden Dawn historian to delve into that for you sometime. But that's above my pay grade. My forte is sorcery and thaumaturgy, spirit summoning, things like that. That's what I've kind of set my sights on for the last 35 years.
So if I look up sorcery in the dictionary, it's probably going to tell me some crap. So what does the term sorcery mean?
Sorcery realistically is basically thaumaturgy. In thaumaturgy, in medieval terms, was wonder working. It's the idea of making wonders happen. Making miracles happen. And typically, a lot of that was done with natural philosophy, is what they called it back then, or what we'd call with herbs, roots, stones, crystals, natural things. That's how they did it. That's how magicians of the day did it back then. Now, a lot of people, a lot of us tend to think, oh, they did it with spirits and all this, astral talismans. Yeah, they did some of that, but people tend to forget they knew a crap load about natural philosophy. Pliny the Elder wrote a huge book called Natural Philosophy, and a lot of medieval magicians loved that book, and they quoted him many times out of it. A lot of them had it in their libraries. And there wasn't just him. I mean, there were others that wrote about natural, Albertus Magnus, and there was Michael Scott, and I mean, plenty of them. Dee, he was just famously known for his angelic magic, but we don't know what else he knew about magic, because when he died, people threw his maid threw a bunch of his books in the fire. Right. So we don't know what all he knew. He might have known a buttload more. See, that's the thing. Those angels might have given him formulas for different cures and stuff that we'll never know about, because a lot of his diaries and stuff were tossed in the fires. And who knows? From what I understand, also there were some royal people that went into his home and stole stuff after he died. They swiped things. Right. So who knows what else was taken? Just like when Tesla died, the government went in and took everything he owned. I mean, this when you get crazy smart people out there, there are rich and powerful people who take notice, and then when they die, a lot of times their stuff comes up missing. So even with magicians, and Dee was definitely one of those. Huh?
When we're talking about Dee and Edward Kelly, why was Queen Elizabeth affiliated with them? What was the connection with Queen Elizabeth? And was Queen Elizabeth, I don't know, an occultist?
No, I don't think so. I think she was just queen, and Dee happened to be her court astrologer, from what I understand. He was, plus he was a spy for her. So, he, was like one of the people of court. He would go and meet with other delegates and, do a little spying and all that. It was said, now I don't know if this is true or not, but it's said that he summoned up a big storm and that sank a bunch of Spanish galleons when Spain was going to cause a war with them.
Spanish Armada.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, people talk about Crowley, but I say, yeah, he didn't sink a Spanish Armada. He did. Yeah. That's hard to argue with. I mean, You can say Crowley did this, Crowley wrote that. And it's like, yeah, but Dee did this. Writing about something's one thing, but doing it's another. And I mean, that's pretty daggone badass. I mean, that was for Queen and country. you know, I would be equivalent to someone, you know, some big badass practitioner casting a spell on making all nuclear weapons go sterile or something. You know, I mean, that would be just badass if that could happen. But yeah, D was awesome. But there were a lot of other guys back then too. It wasn't just him. Agrippa, man, I tell you what, you read some of his stuff, oof. And he was known to be pretty badass too. Going, you know, he was a general. He was like a court astrologer, a general. He was a mathematician. He was a historian. He was a lawyer. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, Agrippa presided. In fact, he went to court and fought for a girl who was being wrongly accused of witchcraft, and got her off the charge. I think Llewellyn wrote about that several years ago in one of their magazines. Their little digest magazines they used to have out.
New Worlds.
Yeah. And that was in there. I forget what her name was, but Henry Cornelius Agrippa represented her. He met her in prison, heard about it, happened to be in the town, and talked to her and said, "I'll represent you," and fought for her in front of the tribunal of judges and convinced them that she was innocent.
Was she?
Yeah. She was a witch. I mean, you know, they suspected her. She was accused of being a witch, and, you know, he proved that she was innocent. That was all, you know, these were all false charges. Just through logic and reasoning.
I was wondering if she was a witch and he just kind of got her off.
I don't think it matters.
Right.
I don't think it really matters.
I never heard that
You know.
story. Cornelius.
Yeah, it was in Llewellyn's, you know, it was in them little digests they used to have out back in the 90s. It was a great little magazine. They had all kinds of great stories in them. We could never find, in fact, sometime if I meet you sometime, I got a few old ones, I'll give them to you. There's some great stuff in them. I mean, in fact, too, I even have a couple copies of the old Cincinnati Journal of Ceremonial Magic. Do you remember that?
Not at all.
Oh yeah, that was great. Hey, that was, well, Thelema, but was a lot of Thelema, some Solomonic, and a lot of real experimental chaos magic back in the day. This came out like in 1989, 1990, 1991, and it was put out by Michelin Linden and Louis Martinet. And he's the guy that did the New Orleans Voodoo Tarot. He did the tarot in the book. And he's associated with Mambo Miriam and Rampart Street Voodoo Temple now. But he and his wife used to do that when they lived in Cincinnati. They did that magazine, and they had Black Moon Archives, which was just basically all kinds of really good ceremonial magic stuff. I mean, everything from you know, basic LBRP variations to, I mean, they had the chocolate LBRP, this Star Trek LBRP, you name it. To I know, all kinds of goofy stuff, all the way up to really advanced out-of-body experiences using the various Sephiro. I mean, some of these magicians, when you actually, you know, looked at what they were offering, it was just amazing, because they were experimenting with. I mean, when I dig out some of a lot of the stuff's in old trunks of mine that I got stacked away, because when my wife and I split, you know how that goes. You got to shove stuff in boxes and stuff. So I got stuff put away in storage. But when I dig it out, I'll make sure to make you some copies so you can read some of this stuff. It'll blow your mind.
Really cool.
Oh yeah.
When I first started hearing about ceremonial magic and the LBRP, the LBRH, the middle pillar, you know, I was practicing this stuff for a long time, and I always started with the LBRP, then I would go to the LBRH, then I went to the middle pillar, and I would immediately go into the Inoki. And I don't know if we're supposed to do it in that order, but that's just something I've always done. Is there a particular order you think, or it's just vary on from person to person?
I think it varies from person to person. I always did it. I always did the LBRP, and then the LBRH, and then if I felt like I needed anything else, like say for instance, if I felt like I needed, well, let's say for instance, if it was like a particularly bad day, okay, and I needed something more, I might do the lesser invoking, or the greater invoking ritual of the hexagram. And why did I do the greater invoking? I wanted to invoke the powers of a particular planet at the end of the day, because I wanted that planet's power to imbue me, and I wanted to balance what I was feeling, what I was missing. So like if I was really angry that day, I wanted Venus to balance the Mars in my system. Or if I was feeling super emotional, I wanted maybe Mars to balance that. If I was feeling flighty, you know, like a little too much moon, then I would pull in a little bit more, what do you call it, Saturn, to ground me. If I was feeling too grounded, I would pull in a little bit more moon to lighten my load. See what I'm saying? I would try to use the planets of the Sephiroth in a way to try to counter what I felt like. And so I used the planets and their power in invoking them to balance me and how I felt at the end of the day. So, and it usually worked, and I still use it on occasion. If I feel like I'm, you know, if I want to tune a room, prior to a ritual, like say I want a room to have, let's say I want to work with a watery spirit. Okay, then I'll tune a room to water, and then I'll summon like I'll tune the room to water using the greater invoking ritual of the hexagram, and I'll use say the moon, and then I'll bring in all that to the four corners and above and below, and bring that water in and let it stay there. And then when I'm ready to summon that watery spirit, it's much easier to bring that spirit in. Works real well.
So the lesser banishing ritual of the hexagram, that's invoking and banishing planetary energies? Is that what that's doing?
No, that was the greater invoking. The greater's for the bringing in of planetary energies.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's better for like when you want to tune a room, or like if you need a heavy dose of the planetary energy.
What's tuning a room? What does that mean?
Well, like I said, like if you want to summon a spirit, for instance, or you want to do a ritual that's, like say of a particular element, you can tune that room. Like I said, if I want to summon, if I want to do a room, if I want to do a ritual that's based on water, I can set that room up by summoning the moon and invoking the lunar element and asking the water element to come through the moon. Okay, and I can summon that through all four of the cardinal points, and then of course above and below. And then I have the 6 holy points, and I can bring that power in, and it's glowing in my room. And then when I go to do either my water working or elemental water working, or if I go to summon a elemental spirit of water or something, or that's tuned to water, it's much easier for that spirit to come through.
Right. You make it comfortable.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Plus plus with its element around, it makes it easier for it to manifest. It makes it easier on this plane for it to, to slip in for a few to talk and communicate, and then slip out. Because see, the astral is where these spirits come from, and that's their mode of transportation. The idea is, ideally, the easiest way to conjure them is to conjure them through a mirror or, a scrying device. because then you can talk to them on their plane of existence, and all they got to do is just make an appearance in something shiny, something reflective. In the past, they've used like pools of ink. In some grimoires, they've even had they would, God knows why, but they even talk about, you got to find a 7-year-old male child, you bring him in, you paint his thumbnail black, and then you scry into that. I mean, why? I don't know, but why a spirit would want to come through the black nail of a child makes no sense to me. But a pool, you could use a pool of black ink in a bowl. That'll work. I've used water with food coloring to make it black. That's worked. Also, I've used, I've used motor oil. That's black. A lot of people laugh at me when I say that, but I say, you know what? If the ancients had old motor oil, they'd have used it. Okay? Don't laugh. And the fact of the matter is, it's recycling something that needs to be recycled anyway. So, using that, it's a petroleum product. I hope the fan doesn't bother you. You picking it up?
No, not at all.
Okay, good. The other thing is, other than used motor oil, I have also used, trying to think, I have a black mirror based on the Donald Tyson mirror, the book a friend of mine made me. He gave to me as a gift several years ago. Well, actually 20 years ago. God, that was 2002, so it's about 21 years old. And I use that quite frequently, even with my radionic stuff. So, that is annoying as hell, I tell you. Sorry about that. What causes that?
I don't know. You work with a lot of you work with a lot of spirits, so I couldn't tell you.
I just had my, last week they were digging next to me and they cut my cable line. So I had, Spectrum come out and put a whole new cable line in there. I got the fastest speed around. So I shouldn't have any problems with latency or any of this stuff. Drops? Whatever. Anyway.
So tell me what radionic means.
Radionics is a type of, it's a theory of using radio frequency airwaves to pinpoint, to tap in to a person, place, or thing. It's the concept of the idea that everything has a frequency, okay? That the universe is vibration.
Immutable law.
Yeah, and all you need to do to be able to take control or get anything is to learn its frequency and then tap into it. See? So what you have to do is with radionics first is you get, first you come up with the, you got to come up with the unit, the radionic unit. Then you learn by using the unit to slowly find the frequency of what you're trying to tap into, be it like an idea, for say like, let's say you want to be better at something, or maybe it's you want to heal a particular ache or a pain in your body, or maybe you want to draw something to you. In the past, it was first used for healing by Ruth Drown and her associates, and she learned this from a Dr. Albert Abrams, who was a medical doctor. He stumbled upon it by accident, and when he found it, he couldn't believe it. And what happened was they discovered that that it would have, the frequency would affect people and things. And they developed by using these tuners from radios, like the old style, like when you tune, they hooked them up in sequence, and they discovered that they could tune into people things and such, and they were healing people of like tumors, cancer. They were healing in plants of, in fact, entire crops of pests and things without pesticides. And it landed them in trouble with the government. You know, first it landed Ruth Drown in prison for healing people, even though she wasn't charging them a dime, but she was healing them of cancer, tumors, all kinds of stuff. The USDA, or actually, no, not USDA. I'm sorry. The FDA came in, slammed her lab, destroyed it, threw her into prison, and then 20 years later, another radionic researcher named T. Galen Hieronymus came to light. He got a hold of her box. Instead of making it 9 dials, he made it 3-dial box. And then he started working, instead of on people trying to heal people, he worked on farms, trying to heal farms from pests. Well, that angered the pesticide companies. So they complained to the USDA, who went into his lab, destroyed it, threw him in prison. He died in prison like Ruth Drown did. And so it's been kind of like, since then, most of the research has been private and privately funded. But it's the concept of just taking, a radio tuner and trying to use usually 3 to 9 tuners, and to try to tune into a frequency and use that, and then project your thoughts to either attract or repel, just like you would with a magic candle or, with a talisman or anything else. It's just the radionic box is used in place of a magical ritual. That's the difference. So instead of, all this timing and stuff that you do for a magical ritual, gathering, the oils, the herbs, the incense, the candles, all that stuff, all you do with a radionic thing is, you take your picture, you take a rate on the witness, and then you put the witness over on the sending plate, and then you take a balance rate. You just flip the rate and subtract from it to get the balance rate, and then you send your balance rate out, and that's how that's how you get your result. It's a simple process, and it actually works. And the cool thing about radionics is you can make a simple machine from spare parts at home, and it can cost you virtually nothing to just to try to experiment with. I tell people that all the time. Chuck Casamano's got free books, ebooks out on his website on how to build them out of shoe boxes, cardboard boxes. Yeah, and I know, but it's for nothing else. It's something to experiment with, to see what to try them out with first. That way, if you don't like what you see, you don't have to spend a lot of money on it. There are professionally made units, yes. I mean, even I make a professional unit on occasion for a client. But the fact of the matter is, I always tell people, try these first with some shoe boxes to make sure they work for you, number one, and number two, you like the results. Because not everybody likes the results they get with radionics. It's like magic. Some people get good results with Enochian, some people get better results with Goetia. Some people get better results with, with working with ancestors. It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
So tell me, are you authored? Do you have a book? Do you have a website?
Oh yeah. I got a website, www.molochsorcery.com. Had it up I've had that one up probably since 2005, and then I've had
on there.
I've had a website up since GeoCities, way back in the day, back in 1997. I was the first website on sorcery up.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the Lone Wolf Show. I hope to have you back on again.